So once you have installed Altium Vault, what you can do is you can open up a web browser and then you can just type in localhost 9780, where in this area you can log in with your default admin and admin for username and password. If this is the first time logging into your Vault, you're going to see the warning here saying this copy of Altium Vault is unlicensed. What you can do is you can click on add license here, and what you can do is you can add license from cloud or from file. From cloud basically means that if you have group administrator privileges for your Altium Live account, you can go to settings here where you can go to general and you can type in your Altium Live username as well as password, and then click on save, and the retrieving of licenses from file or from cloud will then be enabled, right? In this case, since I already have the .alf file already, I don't want it to retrieve from the cloud. I can simply just click on add license from file because I already have the .alf file. Once I'm in here, what I can do is I can first select the Vault license file, which is basically the server licenses, as well as the cal files, which are the client access licenses, right? So first I'm going to do it for my server as well as my cals. Okay. So now that I've done that, it's going to tell me, oh, please sign out and sign back in. So let me just do that. Okay, so now I have a little bit more tabs for me to look at, right? I have settings, licenses, status, configurations, and so on and so forth, right? I can also log into my Vault as well from my Altium Designer as well. So first of all, make sure that it is licensed, and then what you can do is you can go to DXP, sign into Altium Vault, and then just type in your server address, which in this case will be localhost colon 9780, log in with your default admin and admin password. Now, what I want to do first of all is to basically make sure that if I go to DXP Vault Explorer, I just want to see the content of my vault first of all. Okay. By default, it's going to come with these folders here, right? These are what we could call as a predefined folder list, right? That gives you some of the ones that are commonly used, such as the component, as well as all the component types, the design content, the managed content that includes configuration, templates, and so on, as well as the projects folder that includes all the projects that you have, as well as archive projects. So now what I want to do is I want to basically create a new component altogether. So let's just say a crystal component. So I'm going to expand models, and under symbols here, I have several subfolders to play with, either IC or passives. What I can do is I can simply do a right click and delete if I want to delete, or if I want to change any of the folder permissions, right, I can simply do a right click and go into properties, where I can then go into set folder permissions, where I can create folder permission configurations, right? So as of right now, it's shared with administrators as well as librarians, and it's also shared with public, but public can only view, and you don't have can edit checkbox as enabled. So basically, he's just this everyone that has access to the vault, essentially public, um, is only a viewer of this particular folder. Okay, and he or she will not have access to edit any entity of these of this folder, nor the content of this folder. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to add a symbol within the symbols folder. So I can just click on add symbol here, which is going to pop up with this dialog. I can definitely rename this item ID, but I'm just going to leave it as it was originally. And I'm going to give it a comment. Say, for example, generic crystal symbol. Okay. I can also copy and paste it for the description as well, and I can check on open for editing after creation because I would like to edit the symbol right after this. Okay. So right away, once I hit the OK, this schematic library is going to pop up, and it's going to be within a subfolder in the project's management, in the project's panel view under company vault. Right? It basically tells you that you're editing a symbol that is within that has been linked to the vault. So what I can do is I can now create a symbol just like how I usually do with schematic libraries, right? So I can place lines, first of all, to create the crystal box here. What I can do is I can change my grid a little bit. Okay, and then I'm just going to make these two lines here. And I'm going to make them of a different color. Okay, just to kind of make it a little bit more distinct and different. Okay, once I do that, what I can do is I can then save. All I gotta do to release this to my vault is just to save and release the vault, okay? Using these two icons here on the toolbar. If you are a person that do not like to use toolbars, what you can do is you can go to File, Save, and then File, Release to Vault, right? Both commands will execute the same exact thing as your toolbar icons. Right, once again, my comment and description, just make it both the same. I can type in a release note as well, say for example, first release of symbol. Once you click on OK, you're going to see that the file will close because Altium Vault is a file list editing tool. So what you essentially do is you're editing a file, but as you go, once it has been released to your vault, it's going to be deleted, or essentially it's going to be just in your temporary folder where Windows will then periodically delete your temporary files as needed. So if you go to Vault Explorer, you're now going to see within your symbols page or symbols folder, you're going to see this component here, right? It being this particular symbol. However, you might realize that, hey, why does this have an asterisk key? If you want to change or modify the symbol, you can simply just do a right click and edit. Instead of having to find where the symbol is located, if you have hundreds or maybe tens of symbol or schematic library, you would have to open each and every one of them and look for the symbol that you want. In this case, all I gotta do is just do a right click on the symbol and click on edit, right? And then I can see the symbol here where I can do a double click. I can give the designator as X question mark, right? And then just hit OK. And then do another release of my symbol here and just click on OK. So once I do that, if I go back into my Vault Explorer, you're going to see this symbol having the designated X question mark as well as the description down below, generic crystal symbol. Now, if you expand this, you might see that, hey, why am I only seeing the head revision, revision number 2? What if I want to see the other revisions as well? What you can do is you can click on the gearbox and then uncheck on show only latest. That way you'll be able to see both revision 1 as well as revision 2, right? So now that we have done the symbol, we essentially want to move on to our footprints, right? We want to do the corresponding footprint as well. So once again, for our footprints, we have several subcategories which we can use, but since this is just a generic footprint, I'm just going to click on footprints here, right? Because I want to add the footprint, the crystal footprint to this folder. I'll then click on add footprint. The item ID, I'm okay with this. I'm then going to give it a description once again, call it a generic crystal SMD, right? Click on OK. Once I've done that, it's going to open up the PCB library editor once again, and you can see that the PCB library is within Vault because it's been linked to the company Vault, right? So all I gotta do is just place pad and then place the two pads, right? Make sure that I choose it to be on the correct layer. Instead of a rounded shape, I can change the shape as well. Okay. And then just make use of some keyboard shortcuts to make your life a little bit easier. Okay. So what I used was the jump command, which can be accessed by hitting the J key when you're placing the pad or placing any primitives at all in Altium. I find it really useful because you can jump to your origin using JR or jump to a specific location or coordinate using JL key. Once I've done this, I can once again do a save and then release to my vault using these two toolbar icons, but If you don't like it, you can save and then release to vault, right? Either method would work. Okay, have the comment description the same, and then I can have my release node as first release footprint. Once I've done that, similar like before, it's going to be closed, right? You don't need the file anymore. That's the reason why it closes it up. Now, if you go to your Vault Explorer, you'll be able to see the footprint, right? Both in 2D as well as in 3D. As of right now, there's no real 3D body, but if you want to make an edit, all you gotta do is just do a right click and edit, right? Which allows you to edit this particular footprint here. So I do have a 3D body that I would like to include on my footprint here. So what I can do is I can place 3D body, and instead of just a simple extrusion or a cylinder or a sphere, I really would want to include a stat file, right? So I can click on generic 3D model and load from file, where I load it from my downloads folder. Right, so there are different resources where you can retrieve this stat file from. There's the free content like 3 Content Central or GrabCAD, or there's also the manufacturers themselves who also produce you some of these stat files as well, um, by some of them, right? So I'm just going to place this 3 body here, and if I view it in 3D, you're going to see that my pads are way off. So what I can do is I can make some 3D vertex or vertices, right, so that I can make use of the 3 body to actually locate the origin of the pad, so that I can then align my actual pad primitive to the midpoint of the vertex, right? So I can make use of things like the snap points to do this, right? I can add snap points from vertices. I'm going to choose the snap model, and as of right now, it's going to tell me to pick the vertex where the snap point will be added. If I don't want that to happen, I want it to be a midpoint of 2 vertex points, I can simply hit the space bar, and now it's going to change to pick vertex 1 out of 2. The snap point will then be placed at the midpoint, right? If you don't see it, it's right at the bottom. That's the text I was referring to at the status bar, right? So what I can do now is to simply just click on the first vertex and then the second vertex down at the bottom right corner of the pad, right? So now you can see that the um, the location will be right in the center of the pad. So if I go back to 2D, I can simply just move this pad to this location over here. But let's just move on to the next pad first before we get there. Right, so once again, tools, 3 body placement, add snap points from vertices, pick the step model, so pick this one here, hit the space bar, right, because we want it to be the midpoint instead of just one vertex. Choose the one on the top left and then the one on the bottom right. Now if you go back to 2D, you're going to see the 2 snap points here, so I can just move one to the first one and second to the second one. And then all I gotta do is just make sure that the origin is right at the center of the 2 pads, so I can just go edit, set reference, and set it to center, so that the origin is now in the center instead of offset. Now if I view this in 3D, obviously you can move on to change the pad size and so on and so forth, but I'm not going to be bothered about that. I just want to see the 3D body. So once I'm happy with this, I can then do a save, right, and then release this to my vault once again. Right, and then release node, I can say edit 3D body. Okay, so once I've done that, you can go to Vault Explorer, and if you get a preview in 3D, you're going to see the 3D footprint, right, of the Crystal SMD. If you want to view the 2 revisions, once again, make sure that your show only latest is unchecked. Then you'll be able to see revision 1 as well as revision 2. Now, we have created the symbol as well as the corresponding footprint. Now what's left is basically to create a component that integrates these two, right? So I have a folder here called crystals and oscillators, so I can click on add component to add a component within this folder. If you notice, adding component is slightly different, right? If you click on add component, there's no pop-up. However, if you actually click, um, what will happen is going to create a component library in the background in Altium Designer, right? And there's there's no component properties. All you have is just this component library where you then do the integration of schematic and PCB library items and then release it to your vault, right? So if you're expecting the component properties to come up, it will not. So don't keep clicking on add components, simply just click it once and then go back to Altium Designer and you'll be able to see this comp library over here. What I want to do is I want to add the schematic library under my model links here. Right, so I'm going to now find the symbol that I've created. I can also get a preview as well, right from this window here. I can see, okay, this is the symbol that I want. I'll just click on OK. I'll also add my footprint as well in here. I can see, okay, this is the footprint that I want as well. Click on OK. I'm happy with that. And then I'm essentially going to add my PCB library, footprint, as well as my schematic symbol. And then I can also type in a comment, for example, 8 megahertz crystal. And then I can also give it a description, the same as my comment here. And then the case of package, in this case, it doesn't really make sense, but I'm just going to type in a resistor package such as 0805. What I can do is I can also add several parameters as well if I want, right? So I can simply just do an add here where I can add another parameter if I want, and then for the parameter, what I can do is I can also change its type as well. Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, so you can add those parameters in this list as well. What I can do is I can also duplicate this component as well if I want to create more than one components of the similar component. I can just clone component, clone component, clone component. And the reason why you might want to do this is because you may have more than one component that use the same symbol and footprint which you want to release all at once through this one component library. Um, the reason why when you create this component, it comes with all of these parameters is because this folder crystals and oscillators was defined from a component template, right? So if you go into your Vault Explorer and go into crystals and oscillators and go into its properties, you're going to see that it's currently using a component template called crystals and oscillators. That's the reason why those parameters come in here, right? If you want to add it on the go, you can still click on add and add a parameter. However, it's a much better practice for you to to create a component template and then use that component template for the for the components that you want to create so that it will come with the 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 parameters that you want, right? To create it, all you gotta do is just go into Vault Explorer and then look for component templates and then click on add template. In here, if you take a look at the CMPT0015, do a right click and edit, you're going to see that these are basically the parameters in here. You can add several more parameters as well. And for each and every parameter, for example, if you have a resistance in here, like if I were to add a resistance, right, it's good. What you can do is you can configure its type as well, right? Such as for this, it would obviously be ohm. The reason why you might want to do this is because then it'll be easier for you to actually um, filter later on, right? If you are going to use your vault and then you're going to use some of the filtering capabilities in vault, if you make sure that the type code will correspond, the parameter corresponds to the correct type, you'll be able to see that it's a little bit easier for you to filter for the components that you really want. Okay, in this case, I'm just going to keep it very simple and basic. I have three components here with the same PCB library and schematic library. Um, as of right now, what if I want to add another parameter, like for example, my internal part number? So I'm just going to call it as internal part number in here. Okay, and then I'm just going to save and release this to my vault. Okay, and this component library, I'm just going to scrape it because I do not want to use this because I would want to use the new component template, right? So I'm just going to cancel my edit here, And then if I go into my Vault Explorer, I want to make sure that this crystals and oscillators is using the correct component template. So I see that this is the correct one. So I can just click on add component one more time. And we should expect to see the internal part number will come in as well, right? You can, in your component template, what you can do is you can define the default parameter, default value of the parameter, or you can make it required as well. Some of the parameters here, for example, this case or package has the rate rectangular box um, as the border. The reason is because this is one of the required parameters that needs to be filled up. Otherwise, it will tell you, it will not allow you to release this component back to your vault. Okay, so once again, I'll repeat the procedure for my symbol as well as my footprint. Okay, and then I'm going to give it a comment, the same as description, give a random case or package, and then I'm just going to type ABCD1 through 4. And then I'm going to clone it, right, because I want to create a few more similar components. And for the other similar components, it'll be a different um, comment because it's actually another another value of crystal. Okay. This would also have different internal part number as well, such as maybe call it. Okay. I can get a preview of the PCB library as well as the schematic symbol as well, right? Once I highlight, you're going to see that it gives you a preview down on the top right. And then essentially what I'll do is I'll save and release this components, these three components to my vault. So you can see that the save and release as well as edit is very similar on an item per item basis. So I can release all these items, can see the detail where it'll tell you what's its revision, what's its current state, what lifecycle definition it's currently using, what revision scheme it is currently using. Just hit OK, it's going to tell you that release has succeeded. So now if you click on close, the component library will go away because you're no longer editing it. It has been released to your vault. Now if you go to your Vault Explorer, you can see the three components in here, right? Giving you the preview as well as the internal part number, and so on and so forth. Now, what if you want to see the internal part number as one of the column headers? What you can do is you can view the components view, right? Instead of classic view, you can go to components view, where you can then simply do a right click on the component on the column header, and then click on select columns, where you can then choose to view the internal part number and click on add. Right, so now you could see that you have the internal part number as one of the columns in here. You can sort it as well simply by just clicking on the header, just like how you would for any other any other table-driven software. So you can see that for each component you have models, right? So this component here is using a symbol, a footprint, as well as a component template. Now if you go into its symbol, you're going to see that the symbol is generic, right? So it's being used by these three components. How do I know where is it being used? So what I can do is I can, instead of preview, I can go into its where used, and it's going to tell me that it's being used by these three components here. So if I were to make an edit to one symbol or one footprint where it's being used, you would expect it to also change its revision as well as change its points to the newly edited symbol. So let's try that. Okay, I'm going to just do a right click on my symbol here and I'm going to do an edit where I'm just going to maybe add a text at the bottom, right? Just like a dummy string, right? So I'm just going to write a simple text right at the bottom, and then once again do a save and release to my vault. Now you'll see something a little bit different, right? It's going to tell you all the items that are related to this particular symbol, right? Such as these three components here. It's also going to update these three components because these three components, since they are now using a new symbol, it should also have a new revision ID as well, right? So once again, the component library will come up. I can do a save and then release this to my vault, where it's going to tell me that now the ID has been changed from 1 to 2, right? Because of this new change of symbol. Once it has succeeded, if I were to go into my Vault Explorer, you're going to see that if I go into my components and go into its preview, you're going to see that it has these, all of them here pointing to the new generic symbol. And the revision ID has also been changed from, if I were to enable my revision ID here, there we go. You can see that the revision ID has been increased from 1 to 2 as well, right? So the where use and the children capability allows you to do things like that, right? So symbols and footprints are usually generic, but components are not. But they rely on those generic symbols and footprints. So if you make an edit to any of the children item, you would expect the parent item to also change with respect to that, and that is definitely one of the key features of Altium Vault.